A mother's nightmare begins.
What happened?
What secrets lie beneath the surface?
Thank you, Mama. I love you so much.
I love you more. I just want us to be okay. I know. Me too.
I still hear her voice, clear as if it happened yesterday. "Mom, you're the last thing I see," she said, her words hanging in the air like a fragile promise, and a warning I never wanted to hear. We were driving home from her dance recital, the car filled with the soft hum of the radio and the warmth of a late spring evening. I glanced over at her, her eyes sparkling with excitement, cheeks flushed from the spotlight. That moment felt perfect, like a snapshot of everything I'd ever hoped for as a mother. But those words, so innocent, yet so haunting, were the last thing she said before everything changed. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter, a sudden chill crawling up my spine, the road ahead blurred, the headlights of an oncoming car flashing wildly. Time slowed, every second stretching out like a lifetime. I wanted to tell her it would be okay, to hold on to that moment just a little longer. But the world had other plans. Her voice echoed in my mind as the crash tore through the night, the screech of metal, the shattering glass, the terrifying silence that followed. In that split second, I felt everything slip away, the laughter, the warmth, the safety of her presence beside me. It was as if the universe had ripped a hole in our lives, and I was falling through it, helpless and broken. That night, her words became a haunting refrain, a reminder of how fragile life is and how quickly everything can unravel. "Mom, you're the last thing I see." I clung to those words, desperate to find meaning in the chaos that followed. Because if she saw me last, then I had to be strong for her, for us. But strength felt impossible in those first moments after the crash. The nightmare was just beginning, and I had no idea how dark the road ahead would be. The moment the world twisted and shattered, I felt a searing pain explode through my body, sharp, unrelenting, like fire crawling beneath my skin. The impact was deafening, metal crunching against metal, glass spraying like deadly rain. My head slammed against the steering wheel, and everything went black for a heartbeat. Then came the chaos, the screech of tires, the shouts of strangers, the blaring sirens that seemed to pierce straight through my soul. I was trapped inside the wreckage, the car's frame twisted around me like a cage. My breath came in ragged gasps, each inhale a battle against the sharp sting in my chest. I could hear my daughter's voice, distant and trembling, but I couldn't reach her. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized she was still in the car, just inches away but somehow unreachable. The world outside was a blur of flashing lights and frantic faces, but inside, time slowed to a torturous crawl. When the paramedics finally pried the door open, I was barely conscious. Their voices were urgent but gentle, trying to pull me back from the edge of darkness. I felt hands on me, cold, firm, insistent, and then the world tipped again as they lifted me onto a stretcher. The ride to the hospital was a nightmare of pain and confusion, every bump in the road sending jolts through my broken body. At the hospital, everything moved too fast. Doctors and nurses swarmed around me, their faces masks of concentration and concern. Machines beeped steadily, monitoring my fragile heartbeat. I was hooked up to tubes and wires, each one a lifeline and a reminder of how close I was to losing everything. The sterile smell of antiseptic mixed with the distant hum of voices, some calm, some frantic. I wanted to scream, to ask if my daughter was okay, but my throat was dry, my voice lost somewhere in the haze of pain and medication. I caught a glimpse of her then, my beautiful girl, pale and trembling, wrapped in a blanket, but why? died and silent. She looked so small, so fragile, and yet there was a hardness in her gaze that I didn't recognize. It was as if the crash had stolen something from her, something I couldn't yet understand. I wanted to reach out, to hold her close and tell her everything would be all right, but I was too weak, too broken. The hours that followed were a blur of tests, whispered conversations, and waiting for news, for hope, for a sign that we would both survive this nightmare. The doctors spoke in hushed tones about fractures, internal injuries, and the possibility of permanent damage. Each word was a dagger, cutting through the fragile hope I clung to. In those long, agonizing hours, I felt the weight of everything crashing down on me. The fear of losing my daughter, the pain in my own body, and the terrifying uncertainty of what the future held. I was caught between hope and despair, life and death, love and loss. And through it all, her last words echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder of the bond that still held us together, even as everything else seemed to fall apart. When I finally drifted into unconsciousness, I didn't know what awaited me on the other side, but I knew one thing for certain: the nightmare was far from over. Waking up in that sterile hospital room, I expected relief, a chance to heal surrounded by the people who loved me most. But what I found instead was a silence so heavy, it pressed down on my chest harder than any injury. My family, the ones I thought would be my rock, felt like strangers standing just out of reach. The warmth I'd always counted on was gone, replaced by cold glances and whispered conversations behind closed doors. My daughter, the same girl who had clung to me moments before the crash, was now distant, her eyes avoiding mine, her words clipped and guarded. She sat by my bedside, but it was as if a wall had risen between us overnight. I tried to reach her, to ask what was wrong, but she would only shake her head or offer a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. The little girl who once confided in me about everything was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. And then there was my husband. I had always seen him as steady, dependable, the anchor in our stormy seas. But now he was a shadow of that man. His face was drawn and tired, his eyes clouded with something I couldn't name. He was there physically, but emotionally distant, like he was carrying a burden too heavy to share. When I tried to talk to him, he brushed me off with vague reassurances that felt hollow. I caught him on the phone late at night, his voice low and urgent, but whenever I asked, he'd change the subject or offer a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. The more I tried to piece together what was happening, the more the cracks in our family began to show. There were whispered arguments I wasn't meant to hear, secretive phone calls, and a tension that hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. I started to wonder, was the crash really just an accident, or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? Doubt gnawed at me, twisting my love for my family into something tangled and painful. How could the people I trusted most be hiding things from me? The contrast between the love I felt and the betrayal I suspected was unbearable. I wanted to believe in them, to hold onto the hope that we could heal together. But every secret, every cold glance pushed me further into isolation. I found myself retreating into my own thoughts, replaying the moments before the crash, searching for clues in the silence. The house felt emptier than ever, even when they were all there. Meals were eaten in silence, conversations avoided, and the warmth of family dinners replaced by a cold, suffocating distance. And then, one evening, as I was going through some of my things, I stumbled upon something that shattered what little peace I had left. A letter hidden away in a drawer I hadn't opened in years. The words inside were like a punch to the gut, secrets I never imagined, betrayals I never saw coming. It was a revelation that forced me to question everything I thought I knew about my family, my marriage, and even the crash itself. That moment changed everything. The fragile threads holding us together began to unravel, and I realized that the nightmare wasn't just about the accident. It was about the truth waiting to be uncovered. And I was ready to face it, no matter how painful it might be. The letter I found was just the beginning. As days passed, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that the crash wasn't a tragic accident, but something far more sinister. I started digging quietly, cautiously, because the truth felt like a fragile thread that could unravel everything I had left. What I uncovered shattered the fragile illusion of safety I'd been clinging to. It began with small details that didn't add up. The way the other driver's car had swerved just before impact, the strange phone calls my husband had been making late at night, the unexplained bruises on my daughter's arms that she refused to talk about. Each piece was a puzzle, and when I put them together, the picture was terrifying. Someone close to me had wanted to hurt me. Someone I trusted. The betrayal cut deeper than the physical pain from the crash. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies, each wave pulling me further from the shore of who I thought my family was. Fear gripped me not just for my own safety, but for my daughter's. Was she involved? Was she a victim too? Or worse, was she hiding something that could destroy us all? I remember the night I found the proof. A series of text messages on my husband's phone, messages that hinted at threats and plans I never wanted to imagine. My hands trembled as I read them, the words blurring through tears of shock and anger. How could the man I loved be part of this? Or was he just another pawn in a game I didn't understand? That night, I lay awake, heart pounding, mind racing. I was no longer just a victim of a terrible accident. I was a woman betrayed, a mother fighting to protect her family from a darkness that had crept in unnoticed. The fear that had once paralyzed me began to transform into something fierce determination. I started making plans. I reached out to a private investigator, someone who could help me uncover the full truth without tipping off the people I suspected. Every day brought new revelations, hidden debts, secret meetings, whispered threats. The web of deceit was far more tangled than I ever imagined. But the hardest part was facing my daughter. I knew I had to confront her, to break through the silence and find out what she was hiding. Our bond had been fractured, but I still believed in the love beneath the pain. I needed to hear her side of the story, to understand the choices she'd made and the secrets she'd kept. The night before I planned to talk to her, I sat alone in the dark, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I was scared of what she might say, scared of losing her forever. But I was also ready to fight, to demand the truth, and to reclaim the life that had been stolen from us. Because this was no longer just about survival. It was about justice, about healing, about finding the strength to rise from the ashes and take back control. And I knew that whatever happened next, I would face it head on, for me, for my daughter, for the family we still had left. The confrontation was inevitable, and it was going to change everything. Section 6, Fighting Back 8, 100-word summary. The mother takes control, seeking justice and healing. She gathers allies, confronts the antagonist, and fights to protect her family's future. The narrative builds momentum with setbacks and small victories, keeping the audience on edge. Emotional empowerment and resilience shine here, inspiring viewers. Transition, the climax approaches as the truth is about to be fully revealed. I remember the moment I stood in front of her, my daughter, the same girl whose last words before the crash still echoed. In my mind, the air between us was thick, heavy with everything left unsaid. I could see the fear in her eyes, the walls she'd built around herself, and beneath it all, the pain that mirrored my own. It was as if we were two broken pieces of the same shattered mirror, reflecting each other's hurt but unable to fit back together just yet. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. Why did you keep everything from me? Why those words, Mom, you're the last thing I see? What did you mean? She looked away, biting her lip, tears threatening to spill. For a long moment, there was only silence, the kind that screams louder than words. Then finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I was scared, she said. Scared of losing you, scared of what was happening at home. I didn't know who to trust. I thought if I said anything, it would only make things worse. Her confession hit me like a wave. The daughter I thought I knew was carrying burdens I hadn't even imagined. She told me about the fights she'd overheard, the secrets she'd kept to protect me, and the guilt she felt for not being able to stop the crash. Her cryptic last words weren't a curse or a threat. They were a desperate plea, a way of holding on to me when everything else was falling apart. As she spoke, the anger I'd been holding onto began to melt away, replaced by a fierce, aching love. But beneath that love was still the sting of betrayal, the silence, the secrets, the distance that had grown between us. It was a painful contrast, the trust we'd lost versus the hope that we could rebuild it. I told her about the things I'd discovered, the messages, the lies, the fear that someone close had tried to hurt us. She flinched but didn't deny it. Instead, she shared her own fears, her own mistakes, and the ways she'd tried to protect me, even if it meant hiding the truth. For the first time in weeks, we cried together, tears of regret, relief, and a fragile hope. It wasn't a perfect moment. There were still wounds that needed healing, words that needed saying, and trust that needed rebuilding. But it was a start. We made a silent promise that night, not just to face the truth, but to fight for each other. To be honest, even when it was hard, to stand together against whatever came next. That fragile truce was the first step toward healing. And it gave me the strength I needed to keep going, to seek justice, to protect my family, and to reclaim the life we deserved. Because sometimes the hardest battles are fought not against others, but within the walls of our own hearts. And this was ours. After that night, something inside me shifted. The fear and confusion that had held me captive began to dissolve, replaced by a fierce determination I didn't know I had. I realized that if I wanted to protect my family and myself, I couldn't wait for answers to come to me. I had to take control. I had to fight back. The first step was gathering allies. I reached out to people I trusted, old friends, a lawyer who specialized in family cases, and even a private investigator I'd found through a recommendation. Each conversation was a small victory, a piece of armor I added to my growing strength. They listened, believed me, and offered support when I felt like I was drowning in doubt. But the fight wasn't easy. Every step forward seemed to come with setbacks. The antagonist, someone I never expected, was clever, hiding behind lies and manipulation. There were moments when I felt completely alone, when the weight of betrayal threatened to crush me. I remember one night, after a particularly harsh confrontation, sitting in my empty living room and wondering if I had the strength to keep going. But then I thought about my daughter, about the promise we made to each other, and I knew I couldn't give up, not now, not ever. With the help of my allies, I started piecing together the full story. The evidence was mounting, financial records showing suspicious transactions, witness statements that contradicted the official reports, and even a confession caught on tape. Each revelation was a blow to the person who had tried to destroy us and a step closer to justice. I confronted the antagonist directly, a moment I'll never forget. The anger and betrayal I'd bottled up exploded in that room, but so did my strength. I stood tall, voice steady, demanding answers and accountability. It was terrifying and empowering all at once, like reclaiming a part of myself I thought was lost forever. The battle wasn't just legal or physical. It was emotional. I had to forgive myself for the mistakes I'd made, for the times I'd doubted my instincts. I had to rebuild trust with my daughter, piece by piece, day by day, and I had to learn that strength isn't about never falling. It's about rising every time you do. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The community rallied around us, neighbors and friends who had seen the cracks but hadn't known how to help. Their support was a lifeline, reminding me that I wasn't alone. Together, we pushed back against the darkness that had threatened to consume us. There were moments of triumph, small victories that felt like giant leaps. A court ruling in our favor, a heartfelt apology from someone who had been silent for too long, the first genuine smile from my daughter in weeks. Each one was a reminder that healing was possible, that justice was within reach. But even as hope grew, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. The full truth, the one that would shake everything to its core, was about to be revealed. And when it came, it would change our lives forever. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I was ready to face whatever came next with courage, with love, and with the unshakable belief that no matter how dark the night, the dawn would come. Because this was more than a fight for justice. It was a fight for our family, for our future, and I was determined to win. Justice, when it finally came, was both a relief and a revelation. The courtroom was tense, every word spoken carrying the weight of months of pain, fear, and unanswered questions. But as the truth unfolded layer by layer, undeniable and raw, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The person who had tried to tear my family apart was held accountable, and for the first time since the crash, I could breathe without the crushing weight of doubt pressing down on my chest. It wasn't just about punishment, it was about reclaiming our lives, piece by piece. The verdict was a turning point, but the real work, the healing, was just beginning. My daughter and I, once fractured and distant, started to rebuild the bridge between us. It wasn't easy. There were days when the past threatened to pull us back into darkness, when old wounds reopened and trust felt fragile. But with every conversation, every shared tear, and every small act of kindness, we grew stronger. I learned that healing isn't linear. It's messy, complicated, and sometimes painfully slow. But it's also filled with moments of grace, like the first time my daughter smiled without hesitation, or when my husband, finally honest and vulnerable, began to show the man I once knew beneath layers of fear and regret. Looking back, I realize how much this journey changed me. I went from feeling powerless and broken to discovering a strength I never knew I had. I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to keep moving forward despite it. I learned that forgiveness, both of others and myself, is a powerful act of liberation, not weakness. And most of all, I learned that family, even when battered and bruised, is an unbreakable bond that can survive the darkest storms. There were moments when I wanted to give up, when the weight of betrayal and loss felt unbearable. But I held on to one truth: love is stronger than fear, and hope is more powerful than despair. That belief carried me through the darkest nights and into the light of a new beginning. Now, as I stand here, sharing this story with you, I want you to know that you are not alone. Whatever battles you're facing, whether with family, with yourself, or with the world around you, there is strength inside you waiting to be found. Sometimes it takes losing everything to discover what truly matters. If my story resonates with you, if you've faced your own moments of heartbreak and betrayal, I invite you to share your story in the comments. Let's build a community where we can support each other, find courage in our shared struggles, and celebrate the victories big and small that remind us we are stronger together. Remember, no matter how dark the night, the dawn will come, and with it, the chance to heal, to forgive, and to love again. Thank you for listening. Your story matters, and so do you.